Arctic frost is Joe Biden's Watergate. Merrick Garland was a fundamentally corrupt attorney general. Jack Smith was a fundamentally corrupt prosecutor. Accompanying the subpoena was an order, which I have in my hand right here, an order that was signed by Judge James E. Boasberg. Now, who is Boasberg? Boasberg is that radical leftist judge who is out of control. Judge Boasberg issued an order to AT&T and signed that order prohibiting AT&T from informing me of this subpoena for at least 1 year. My assumption is Judge Boasberg printed these things out like the placemats at Denny's, one after the other. I am right now calling on the House of Representatives to impeach Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg put his robe down, stood up and said, "Sign me up to be part of the partisan vendetta." Arctic frost is Joe Biden's Watergate. Merrick Garland was a fundamentally corrupt attorney general. Jack Smith was a fundamentally corrupt prosecutor. This was a political enemies list from the beginning. 197 subpoenas for 430 Republican entities and individuals. That is an absolute and egregious abuse of power. The Biden Justice Department signed off on issuing subpoenas for the phone records of at least 9 U.S. senators. 20% of the Republicans in the United States Senate were the target of this fishing expedition. They did so in complete contravention of the Constitution, of separation of powers, of the speech and debate clause, of free speech, of basic rights of privacy. This is an executive who believes it is justified spying on their opponents in the legislature because they convince themselves the ends justify the means. I want to talk to you about one of those subpoenas. One of those subpoenas went from Jack Smith to AT&T, seeking my cell phone communications. It went to AT&T, and I actually want to commend AT&T for doing the right thing. AT&T is based in Texas. AT&T looked at that subpoena, and they went to their legal counsel, and they said, "What should we do with that subpoena?" And their legal counsel said, "You cannot comply because this is protected by the speech and debate clause of the U.S. Constitution." And so AT&T declined to comply, did not hand over my cell phone records. Now, one might ask, ordinarily, a phone company being asked to hand over the phone records of a sitting senator would notify that senator. Well, there was a reason AT&T did not do so. Accompanying the subpoena was an order, which I have in my hand right here, an order that was signed by Judge James E. Boasberg. Now, who is Boasberg? Boasberg is that radical leftist judge who is out of control, who has been issuing nationwide injunctions, one after the other, trying to stop President Trump from carrying out his mandate from the voters. Judge Boasberg issued an order to AT&T and signed that order, prohibiting AT&T from informing me of this subpoena for at least 1 year. And Judge Boasberg gave the basis for that order, and I'm going to quote from the order Judge Boasberg signed. "The court finds reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in destruction of or tampering with evidence, intimidation of potential witnesses, and serious jeopardy to the investigation." That's an order a judge signed. Now, I can tell you right now, there is precisely zero evidence to conclude that I am likely to destroy or tamper with evidence or to intimidate potential witnesses. Zero evidentiary basis for that. This order is an abuse of power. This order is a weaponized legal system. My assumption, we don't have the subpoenas that were issued for the other senators, but my assumption is Judge Boasberg printed these things out like the placemats at Denny's, one after the other. We don't know that for a fact, but I feel confident that he concluded it's likely that Lindsey Graham would destroy evidence, and Marsha Blackburn would destroy evidence, and Eric Schmidt would destroy evidence, and Chuck Grassley would destroy evidence. If a litigant makes a claim for which there is no factual basis, that litigant is subject to sanctions in federal court. And if a judge signs an order reaching a factual conclusion for which there is zero evidence whatsoever, that judge is abusing his power. I am right now calling on the House of Representatives to impeach Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg put his robe down, stood up and said, "Sign me up to be part of the partisan vendetta against 20% of the Republicans in the Senate." That is a dereliction of duty and a violation of the judicial oath. And I want to thank Chairman Grassley and Chairman Johnson for pursuing this tenaciously like a dog on a bone. We are going to get the answers of every person who signed off on this abuse of power, and mark my words, there will be accountability for these zealots who wanted to corrupt the Department of Justice and corrupt the judiciary in order to try to attack their enemies list. That is unconstitutional, it is immoral, and it is wrong. Senator Kennedy.
I'm next.
We didn't have you on the list since you said you were here.
Well, I'm one of those senators that did have their records revealed. Verizon is my wireless carrier, and Verizon never challenged, never moved to quash. They complied with the subpoena that went forward on our records. Now, Ted talked about the speech and debate clause. This is also a violation of our First Amendment and Fourth Amendment rights. It is a violation of the separation of powers. It is a violation of the Stored Communications Act. I am looking forward to bringing Jack Smith before us. I am looking forward to bringing the wireless companies before us and finding out exactly what happened.